thank you all for tuning in today. Stories of UFO sightings seem incredible and far-reaching to the uninitiated. There's Roswell, Rendlesham, the Phoenix Lights, and many more that have captivated our hearts and minds. In fact, many of us have seen YouTube videos of purported sightings and other strange aerial phenomena. But how frequent are these otherworldly encounters really? To help us explore this topic, we'll be talking to Tom Conwell. Tom Conwell is a ufologist and has been an electronic technician with the U.S. Navy and Honeywell for over 42 years. Over the past 5 years, Tom has written an extensive collection of blogs based on aspects of ufology, has studied and researched UFO sighting reports from the entire East Coast, and can talk about any or all of these subjects. He is the author of the brand new book, They Are Here, East Coast UFOs, Volume 1. So please welcome Tom Conwell. Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Oh, great, Dr. Rita. It's good to be here with you.
I am just excited to have you on. I found that one of the things that I appreciated about your book was that you really didn't talk about, and I'm going to say, sightings in a, Rendlesham and doing case reports per se, but what I really gleaned out of it was this statistical anomaly that you seem to find once you start looking at all of these sightings. Was that what you really wanted to bring forward in this book?
That's not how I started. How I started out with this was I was looking for topics that I could talk about. I love giving speeches and love to tell people about the cosmos and nature of life out there. And I was just looking for some topics. So I saw the National UFO Reporting Center, and I looked through there and decided to do a couple of graphs just to see what people were reporting. I didn't know. I had no idea. And I actually thought what I was going to get is a whole ton of reports on triangular craft. That's what I expected, right? Because I really wanted to do a talk about that. Well, around the same time, as I started doing the research, I saw a UFO in the sky. And it wasn't just one, it was 11 of them. And they came in waves of 2. They popped on out of nothing, just popped into the air, went across the sky, performed a maneuver, and then disappeared. This was way beyond what my mind at that point was able to comprehend. And
so
the
this
reason,
was actually fairly recent.
Yeah, this was May of 2014. Okay. I didn't know what to think. I had no idea what to think. As a matter of fact, I kept telling myself during the entire sighting that this has to be a balloon. This has to be Chinese lanterns. This can't be what I'm seeing. Well, after looking at absolutely everything, looking at these things through a pair of binoculars, getting a real good view, maybe within a mile of them, I knew that they weren't anything normal or natural. I had no idea what was going on, and that's what lit the fire. Something is happening here. Why am I seeing them when I never saw anything before? Are they being seen around here a lot? I had no idea. I honestly had no idea. So I broke down New York into 5 zones. Now, I didn't want to do that initially. What I actually just mentioned that I'm from New York. That's why I was doing the talks. And I broke down New York into 5 zones because I thought I could give a talk, perhaps in each zone, each area, about what they were seeing. I thought, what the heck. When I realized that all 5 areas were seeing somewhat the same thing, I became a little curious. What is really going on here? Well, just about the same time as I was finishing up the research on New York, and I didn't intend to go any further, I got asked to talk at a conference, a paranormal conference in Philadelphia. So I thought, well, what the heck? Let me look at Pennsylvania. So I broke Pennsylvania down into 5 zones, and I saw exactly the same thing in Pennsylvania. When I said, wait a minute, what is happening here? Something is going on. Well, that's what got me into doing the remainder of the East Coast. I was like to take a small subject and make it expanded, to look at the remainder of the East Coast and find out what's going on there also.
When you had your sighting, was it a very long encounter? I mean, you said you were looking through binoculars, so it sounds like you had enough time to go get binoculars to look through.
Yes, each group of two that came through to me, each group of two that came by, were in the air for approximately 6 or 7 minutes.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, if you were to hold a dime, I guess at arm's length. Well, no, it wasn't a dime. It was more of a quarter size at arm's length. This is what it looked like, and it looked like a ball of fire, just a ball of fire. I've seen nothing even remotely similar in my entire life, except the fire from a distance, like a campfire or something.
What,
But
daytime, nighttime?
Yeah, it was nighttime. It was, the sun had been down for about an hour and a half.
But I've been told that New York, Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania is kind of a hotbed for UFO activity.
Well, I thought maybe they were. That's why I like giving talks about it, because people were interested. And I found out that there's areas of Pennsylvania and New York that are a lot hotter than other areas. The Hudson Valley was hot for a different reason, because of what happened back in the 80s.
All right, well, we'll come back to,
Yeah.
to that. I'm going to make a little note on that because I'm very curious. I'm from New York and the Hudson Valley, and I was talking to my sister about UFOs and whatever. She goes, "I saw a UFO," and I'm like, "Get out of town! Why am I just hearing about this
Yeah.
now? You know, however many years later." I go, "Where was it?" She goes, "Over St. Joseph's Church." I'm like, okay, I have not ever seen a UFO. So, question, and this is a new thing for me. Do you feel that having that experience has changed your perception and belief in extraterrestrials?
Not really. It just affirmed it. What really changed was the various interviews that I did of people that were abducted. That lit a fire under me. That was more than I can even put into words. It was just beyond belief what happened. I still have nightmares from the stories I got. Unfortunately, I will not talk about what happened to people because it's just too personal.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we already talked about that. And so in what time frame did you do this investigation? Were you just looking at the last few years of activity? You know, so what's the scope of the data set that you were looking at?
Okay, well, the data set went from 1945, 1950, all the way to the present. Now, obviously, this database didn't exist back even before 2000. So people would create reports and send them in, and the reports were approximations. But what I wanted to do was look at what people were seeing and try to quantify what they're seeing and how has it changed over the years.
Well, I don't think I've been doing research for a new book, and I've been looking at, you know, potential extraterrestrial craft sightings that predate aerial flight. So where my focus is hot air balloons, because now we have aerial flight. So that's my baseline point, and I'm looking backwards. And what's fascinating is that the reports that you get are consistent with what people say today.
Absolutely, there's no change. It's the same thing. They may be seeing slightly different kind of craft, and maybe even their terminology has changed because they're a little bit more aware. And matter of fact, I see that from state to state. people's terminologies are drastically different. Um, but yeah, there's a very, very interesting scenario of sightings because they are seeing the same kinds of things.
So, what kinds of crafts are people reporting? You know, if you were to
Okay.
break down the different kinds of sightings.
Okay. Well, there's if you were to go into the National UFO Reporting Center and start looking, you will come up with about 50 different kinds of things that people are seeing. Probably more. I mean, that's just a number I threw. There's probably more that people have said they've seen in the air. Well, what I did was, if I'm going to graph something and make it look reasonable, I have to take all of these different kinds of sightings and condense it into certain ones, create definitions for what I'm seeing, so that if, you know, like a triangular craft would go into a triangle, I'm also going to make sure that perhaps something that looks like a boomerang is also going to go into a triangle. So, you know, I like, I want to put like things together. All right. So when I first started out, I realized I was going to have 50 lines of things to look at, and for each of 4 different time frames, and it was just going to be absolutely crazy. It was just never going to work. So, of course, I had to start condensing, and what I saw was things like oval and spherical and round and oval, spherical, round. There's several other kind, and I put them into spheres. All right. So I tried to condense that. All right. Fireballs were just pretty much just that. Looked like a ball of fire in the air. Then there were shapes. Now that's a kind of generic, but under shapes, people are seeing all kinds of things in the sky. People are seeing things that look like jellyfish. Yeah, really.
Jellyfish?
Yeah, with like tentacles, and like weird. And they're seeing rectangular. If you figure, think of it this way: see a shoebox that is flying. A shoebox just
It's
flying.
the Borg.
It's crazy, yeah. But certainly nothing I know of. You know, it's just crazy. Somebody I know saw a flying shoebox that looked just like this, except on the back side of it, it had an extension out. It was rectangular. How the heck does this thing stay in the air? It was 150 feet from them, hanging over the trees, going at about 5 miles an hour. And they saw this for like a total of about 12 minutes. They said the thing was multiple 100 yards long. How in the world did this thing stay there? You know, there's a lot of weird stuff out there. But anyhow, I tried to get like really strange things that I noticed didn't have a whole lot of feedback, and put them into shapes. And
So do you separate out the triangles and the boomerangs as their own category, separate from shapes, like miscellaneous weird stuff?
no, triangles and boomerangs were called triangles, just to make it easy.
Right.
The weird things, the weird boxes and whatever's in the sky, they're now shapes.
Okay.
Lights, well, people see a lot of lights in the sky. A lot of times they're misidentified, and I don't know whether to believe them or not. You know, you can't tell what they're seeing. You know, but there's a whole lot of things that are too far away to tell if it's a sphere. So that falls under lights. Then there's discs, which are the prototypical flying saucer. Okay, so that I think that's 7 of them that I told you. I don't know if I missed any. Disc. So cigar. Yeah, that was the other one. It
So
looked
that
like
got its own category as well?
a long cylinder. Well, I couldn't go too far, too many more than that, because it would just be too many lines and stuff, and you just couldn't tell what you were looking at. So then I looked at all of the reports back, and realized that if I were to create a report that would look at, let's say, a year by year, I'd have too many dots and too many lines, and it would just be impossible. So I had to put them together so that they would be comparable. If I were to take, like, say, 1947 all the way through 2001, there would be a certain amount of sightings there. And then 2002 to 2004 or 5, and then 2006 to 2010, and then 2011 to the present. However, I broke that out, and I did it differently on different ones. I wanted to have the same amount of sightings in each group so I could compare apples and apples. Didn't want to compare 3 sightings to 3,000, because then you don't know what you have. It's just not relevant. So when I did all that, then I was able to create graphs that were in chunks that were comparable, and I could tell what was happening in time frames. Mm-hmm. What I also wanted to do was, when I had something weird happen within a particular time frame, I would look closer at just that stuff, which is what I saw down in the Hudson Valley, and just look at that and find out what was really going on there, and if there was something special. So,
you were talking a little bit about the National UFO Reporting Center. What kind of data do they collect, and do they do anything with this data, or do they just republish people's reports? I mean, what's their part in this whole deal?
I honestly don't know. I've tried contacting them several times, and apparently Roger's very, very, very busy. So I don't know what his plan was. But with this database, what's out there is the time of the sighting, when it occurred, where it occurred, how long the sighting occurred for. There's also a link on every sighting to the long report that someone may have done, multiple paragraphs. And there's also a quick description of what they saw. So what I wanted to do was take a look at what each of these sightings were, read them, understand what they were reporting, because these are their reports. I don't believe that the National UFO Reporting Center goes in and changes anything.
Right.
But what they do is they will say every so often that something looks like a hoax, or something looks like it's not a true report. I have no idea what that criterion is. So just to be on the safe side, I didn't include those numbers, because they may know something that I don't, like multiple reports from the same place that look weird, that kind of thing. There's a whole lot of stuff. So when I started looking at these things, I would see something like, let me give you an example of one. Someone reported a triangle, and there was a quick description, maybe a sentence and a half, that said, saw 3 lights in the sky in a triangular formation, and it was late at night, and then it cut off, because you had to go to the long form. So you click on the long form and you start reading, and what it is 3 lights in the sky that are in a triangular formation. It's not really a fully formed triangle. So I actually started through the database. This is about the 4th time. Now, this is New York. About the 4th time through this database, and realized that I have a whole lot of these things that are called one thing that probably should be another. Mm-hmm. I realized, here we go again. Go back to the very beginning in the first sighting and read every single report, and read and try to understand what they're trying to tell me. In a lot of cases, the triangles became lights, so that that's all they saw was just lights in a triangular formation. Sometimes the triangle of lights was close enough that they saw spheres that were lighted. Okay, well, that became a sphere sighting. Other times, I saw a description that the lights that formed the triangle were glowing and looked like they were on fire. Well, that became a fireball. Okay, so it was really rough, really rough, and took absolutely forever to do this. The
That's the
fir-
nature of true research.
oh, brother, it was awful. It was just awful. It took me probably 6 months of reading. Now, this wasn't just New York. This was the entire East Coast, and I read a whole lot of reports and saw a whole lot of misspelled words. It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. But I don't fault a whole lot of people, because when after you see a sighting, your heart's beating fast. If they ran right in and made their sighting report, I wouldn't be surprised if they said they actually saw aliens, whether they did or didn't, because their heart is going so fast. It is very exhilarating, let me tell you, very exhilarating.
You've mentioned the term spheres and then a separate term fireballs. And
Yes,
so, can you describe the difference? I mean, I get like the saucer shape and the different shapes,
yes.
but I'm kind of going, okay, sphere's round, and I would assume a fireball is round also.
That's exactly. It is round. It's round. A lot of people identified things in opposite directions than I would have. They would call a a true fireball that a ball of fire going through the sky, that did not have a trail of smoke behind it, and that would disappear while they were looking at it. Well, they would call that, sometimes they call it a light, because their mind wouldn't come up with the right word. They didn't know what to call it. Sometimes they would call it a sphere because it was indeed a sphere. So could I call something a sphere that was a fireball, and vice versa? I could have, but my trip point was the word fire or fiery or on fire or something like that. If somebody said it looked like it was on fire or fiery or creating a fire-like appearance, something like that, that became a fireball for me. And anything else, which were spheres, roundish,
Became a
sometimes,
sphere.
yep, sometimes orange, sometimes green, sometimes white. You name the color, it's absolutely been reported. Sometimes red, if you can imagine that, a big red ball in the sky. Really weird. Really weird.
Okay, so I have another question about the fireballs. Did you sort out through those reports what could have been like space junk burning up in the atmosphere or meteors, or did you just leave that this is what people saw and I'm just reporting it?
Good. I wasn't even going to mention that, but I'm glad you did. Um, if for instance, an asteroid enters our atmosphere, it's entering the atmosphere at between 30 and 60,000 miles per hour. Okay, really fast, and it will burn up in our atmosphere very quickly, and we'll see it for 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds, maybe at the most. All right. So what I did, oh, excuse me, and space junk would come in, burn up in somewhat the same way, but they both would do the same thing. They'd both leave a trail of something in that would be visible. All right. So just to make sure that I wasn't going to misinterpret what someone saw, and people are notoriously very bad at judging time, especially if they're excited. Anything under a minute, I disregarded. So if they
Okay.
said, they saw something for 45 seconds, well, they could have seen it for 3 seconds, but their heart was going so fast they couldn't identify. So if they saw something for a minute, I said, no can do, not a report, and just deleted it. And I
Okay.
looked at data that was only there for enough time that someone could determine what it was. Now, the only sightings that I used that were less than a minute were several sightings that were flashes of light in the sky, just a bright, enormous flash of light. Sometimes I called them lights, depending on what they saw before or after. Other times I disregarded them because they may have seen it out of the corner of their eye and it was a bright star, and oh, geez, it just flashed, and it really didn't. If they were very specific about what they saw, then I would include the flash as a partial sighting.
In your research, because it sounds like you read a ton of stuff, did you find multiple reports from multiple people in date clusters on the same day, reporting on the same observation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, bunches of them. Now, what I wanted to do is see what people were seeing generally in the sky, and if, let's say, 1,000 people saw the same thing within 20 minutes of each other, to me, that was one sighting, not 1,000. Because I didn't want to skew the numbers, just because a lot of people saw it. Okay, what I liked about some of these sightings, especially when I mapped them, is the sightings would go in like a straight line across the state. That was really cool.
I bet.
Yeah, you didn't get a chance to see that very often. If they were quick, I deleted them. If they were, and I'm not sure where I was going with that either. But anyhow.
But you had a certain level of criteria that you required for it to make your set of numbers, and didn't just take everything. I mean, because people will sit there and see a plane going through the sky, or they might see like a satellite or something and go, "Oh, it's a UFO."
All the time. That's where the long report comes in handy. You get a chance to read the long report, and typically people will tell you what they're seeing in this long report, and you can pretty much tell that they're looking at a planet, or they're looking at a bright star, or they're looking at an airplane. And you can pretty much tell. If they are, and I doubt it, I delete it. I don't want to use it because I just don't know what that's going to do to the data that I'm seeing.
Okay. Hi, this is Dr. Rita Louise. We hope you've been enjoying the program today. If you'd like to hear more from this guest or other guests we've had on the show, please visit www.justenergyradio.com.